What's going on, guys? This is Bruce Matson, your host of the show, The Perfect Cast. And it's been a reboot. I took some time off during the season for some reason, and now we're back with the second episode of the reboot. And I got another guest for you guys. I'm bringing in guests now, spice things up. And I brought in Drew Osinchuk, the Bean Counter. You can find him on Twitter at DF Bean Counter, and he is all over the place. He's got a Patreon page, Bulletproof FF. He's got the Bulletproof podcast, and he's got a Bulletproof YouTube channel. And I suggest you guys check that out because it's great content. The YouTube channel is very entertaining. I've been watching it off and on, and it's been one of my favorite watches as of late. And Drew, thank you for coming on, man. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Heck yeah. Ready to talk some football and get ready into these rookies. And it's been an awesome offseason so far. Very interesting.
Yeah, there's been a lot of unusual things happen this offseason that have kind of thrown a wrench in pretty much everything that I've had planned coming into it.
Yeah. Today was kind of weird with the Sam Darnold news. Even that just came out of nowhere, and them training 6th, 4th, and 2nd.
Yeah, I think they gave up a 2nd as well. It was certainly not a we need a backup quarterback trade. I didn't think it was. Maybe he is the answer there. We'll see.
Could be, yeah. I mean, all it takes is just a little bit of change for a guy like that. Just a new face, new place type deal.
Yeah, a lot of the guys benefit from the change of scenery if they kind of flounder in their first stop. So we'll see if Darnold can turn it around.
Yeah. Starting things off on this rookie talk, a big topic of discussion this whole offseason is the evaluation of Kyle Pitts, how he should be valued, and how he should be valued since he's a tight end, how they develop, and where he should be drafted. Some people consider him a generational prospect at the position, and overall, when you watch him on tape, you look at the numbers, he's a good player. I just wonder, what do you feel about him?
I think that Kyle Pitts is quite easily one of the best tight end prospects we've ever seen. And I also will not be drafting Kyle Pitts in any of my leagues.
That makes sense. Well, how come?
It's just opportunity cost. Like when we're drafting Kyle Pitts, he pretty much has to be Travis Kelce. If he's not Travis Kelce, we're going to be disappointed. And at that draft cost, there's just so many other wide receivers / running backs that you can take that they don't even have to be good, and they will exceed his value after the first year. And I'm not of the opinion that Kyle Pitts is going to be cheaper next year. I don't think that's accurate. Tight ends rarely lose value. When people draft a tight end, they're usually in for the long haul, or at least for more than 1 year. So even if he doesn't do, even if he isn't the best rookie tight end of all time, he could still maintain his value. But the issue is he's probably not going to gain much value. So if he has like a 500-yard Noah Fant type season, it will be good and it will help him maintain his value, but he's probably not going to go up in value. Whereas you could take like a who's going around him, like a Devonta Smith or something like that, who also has a lot of hype. Not for me personally, but a lot of people in the industry do. And if he has a 1,000-yard season as a rookie, he's going to be borderline first-round pick next year. So there's just not enough upside from a value perspective with Kyle Pitts. We only have so much, value tied to our rosters. I don't want to have it stuck in a player that can't actually gain any value. And tight ends is really the only position that I ever care about this with. Like wide receiver, running back, if they're good, they're going to gain value, and they could explode. Like try to trade for T. Higgins right now. It's near impossible.
That's true.
And he didn't even have 1,000 yards as a rookie. So like the fact that you can buy Kyle Pitts after his rookie season, like the fact he's still attainable is maybe the way to put it, is appealing to me. Like we can see that he is in fact really good, and we can probably still go and buy him. That's kind of where my stance is with Kyle Pitts. And then if he isn't really good, well, we probably haven't lost all that much. Like I don't think there's any way that Kyle Pitts isn't going to be like a back end tight end 1 for the rest of his career kind of thing. Like I think he's pretty well locked into multiple tight end 1 seasons. But we have a terrible track record of projecting tight end 1 overall type players. Like nobody, Travis Kelce was a 3rd-round pick that really wasn't all that impressive as a prospect. George Kittle was a 5th. Darren Waller was a 6th. These are the best tight ends in football, the only ones that matter. And nobody projected those guys to be what they are. The guys that we did project are like Evan Ingram and OJ Howard and David Njoku and, the 2019 guys, Hawkinson and Fant. And none of those guys ever reached the echelon of the other 3. So it's just really hard for me to say, and I don't have a way to pinpoint it. Like with wide receivers, I can look at Jamar Chase and be like, this guy is he's a Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson level prospect. He's that good. That's what we should expect. When I look at Kyle Pitts, I don't have anything that's jumping out at me saying that he's that good, because all the guys that in the past that did have that kind of appeal weren't that good. Yeah.
Another thing I think about too is just the price you got to pay. It's a really high rookie pick at 102, 103, something like that. Some people may be paying 101 if they're over the moon for him. And I feel like you look at that risk involved. I love him. I love Kyle Pitts, but you could always this is a good year. We're so deep at wide receiver and the values are all weird all over the board that trading back, picking up multiple late firsts or seconds or however the trades pan out could be even more beneficial. We saw it last year. Some guys probably somewhere randomly in their hometown probably traded back in their drafted Justin Jefferson and probably drafted T. Higgins together and just hit on that luck. I could do that and draft both Moores and maybe hit on both those guys, or get me a Rashad Bateman and Elijah Moore or something like that and maybe hit on one and kind of hit on the other. And it's kind of, I feel a lot safer with that. Another thing I feel like I could do at that price is probably package that pick up and maybe get my running back of choice from last year's class and be safer at that point.
Yeah.
At that point.
Absolutely. I saw Matthew Berry tweeted today that somebody in one of his leagues took Kyle Pitts at 101 in a Superflex league. And I was completely floored. I was like, you can absolutely not pick a tight end over Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
I could rationalize the 102 if you absolutely had to get, if we were grasping at straws, we could rationalize the 102, even though it would be a bad process. But over Trevor Lawrence, it's just nuts. It's nuts.
I saw the poll, and the poll even had Pitts over Lawrence, which was very, very crazy. And Lawrence is considered the next greatest quarterback prospect since Manning, probably best in our lifetime, really could be.
Yeah.
And it's just weird. It's super flex too, where quarterback value is pumped up. Try trading for Dalton right now or Darnold. And it's hard. It's rough. And you got to pay up for that. And then Lawrence, once he's on a team, he's going to be even more expensive than that 101.
Oh yeah.
Instantly. It's just one of those things. The Pitts hype is crazy. I mean, I like him, and I'm at the stance where I'll diversify maybe, but I don't really have that many high up picks either because I kind of do well in my leagues. So I'm not going to have many of those choices. But I imagine if I was in 12 spots where I had top 3 or whatever, I'll probably would draft some of them, but I would diversify out and move around and do a bunch of different things. I just wouldn't be locked on, targeted on it. I wouldn't go with 0 pits, but I wouldn't be all in. I'd kind of move around and stuff. I'd probably have 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10 drafts or whatever. But I like them. I like them a lot. I understand, but there's also a lot of things I can do since this canvas of rookies is very broad with the values, especially at wide receiver. And then you got a decent quarterback class on top of that. And then some interesting tight end prospects in the early third.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was pretty out on Pitts because I was like, oh, you can just pivot and take Brevin Jordan in the late second. And I'm into that. And then Brevin Jordan had this super disappointing not combine, pro day. I expected him to everyone that I had read that watched his film said that he was this uber athlete, and then he just completely flopped athletically. And athleticism matters to me at tight end. It doesn't have wide receiver that much, but at tight end it sure does. And it was now we used to have this nice pivot. We could be oh, you can miss Kyle Pitts because you can just take Brevin Jordan later and it's fine. But now there's Like, you can't even just take Brevin Jordan later because Brevin Jordan has low ceiling. And it's like, well, I don't know. Maybe we should take Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's a weird conundrum. And then a guy to pivot to is Devonta Smith, who has got a cascade of red flags, and everyone is either on one side or the other with him. And it's kind of weird. Like, some people think he's going to be automatic Hall of Fame, going to wear that gold jacket, or on the other end, he is straight trash, which I don't get. I'm kind of like in the middle. Like, I feel like he can be a good player, but he may not produce where we want him in fantasy for the price we get, and there's a good chance of that.
Absolutely. I think that I've done a lot of work around like alpha beta wide receivers and just like size, basically profiling players this year. And Devonta Smith's BMI is like, we've never seen it before, which is a convenient excuse for a lot of people to say, well, we've never seen it before, so we don't know. But if you just like up the threshold way past where he's at, it's still bad when you're looking at ceiling for wide receivers. Like the beta, like I have the alpha and beta, the hit rates at top 24 seasons are comparable between the two. They're not like that outrageous when you control for like, college production and draft capital and like all the stuff that we normally would control for. But where you see the real differences in wide receiver one seasons, and these betas just haven't historically been wide receiver ones very often. And when they do hit, it's usually like once. And then they, they're a wide receiver two on their own team most of the time. They're, like the traditional, he's a better NFL pick than fantasy pick because it's going to be a great NFL wide receiver too. And I feel like that's Devonta Smith to a T. He's very similar in that sense to a couple of the other Alabama receivers come out lately, like Jerry Jeudy and Calvin Ridley. They're all really, really small. Well, not short, but like really light. And then they, they were never really all that dominant, other than Calvin Ridley, who was super dominant at Alabama. But Jeudy he had 1 year of production, and the other ones weren't really where we want them. Devonta Smith didn't do anything until his third year. And like I said, they're betas, so they just don't profile as like the alpha X that's getting 140, 150 targets. They profile as the guys that are probably getting like a 20% target share alongside a Cortland Sutton, like Jerry Jeudy's at. So I'm like, where do we have to buy Devonta Smith? It just doesn't make sense to me. Like the ceiling appeal historically isn't there. There is a case to be made that maybe he's a better player than his stats suggest based on the Alabama factor. But Jerry Jeudy played exactly like we expected him to based on analytics, and Henry Ruggs played exactly like we expected to him based on analytics. So I'm having a hard time coming to grips with making an exception for these guys when we've never actually seen it matter. And when we know that Henry Ruggs isn't good, like we know that definitively now. He's played his rookie year and he was terrible. So I don't know.
I feel the same thing. And the one rebuttal I see, I know you see it too, is they say he played with 4 former first-round picks, and that stunted his growth. But just because they're first-round picks doesn't mean those guys are good. Doesn't mean they're elite-level players. It's really just a title from there. So, like, if Jerry Jeudy doesn't go off at the NFL, if Henry Ruggs isn't going off, then what's that first-round label really mean? It's just guys who are overdrafted. And should I count players being overdrafted as a threshold for my metric? Because it's kind of, I'm just banking on this NFL team who made this mistake to accidentally make something right here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the Oakland Raiders said that Henry Ruggs is really good and took him in the first round, so that automatically makes everyone else on that team really good. That's not how it works. Yeah. So I can realize that, like, he's an older receiver. He had a late breakout. And usually when you're on an NFL team, it's not like most NFL teams have scabs at the receiver position to compete with. Usually they're playing against guys or playing with guys who was good on their college teams, who played well at the college level, who had somewhat production. So it's not like he's going to go from Alabama and compete with those guys and then go to an NFL team and just dominate because he's playing with just scabs. He's going to probably be competing for targets with somewhat similar competition, athleticism-wise, talent-wise. So I don't get that narrative too. No, I completely agree. If he once these players get to the NFL, they're not competing against small betas at Alabama anymore. They're competing against Cortland Sutton and Noah Fant in Denver, or they're just terrible like Henry Ruggs and Can beat out Nelson Aguilar, and I don't even know who else was on that team. Well, the tight end's pretty good. Darren Wallace is pretty good, but the wide receivers there were not roadblocks in any stretch of the imagination in Oakland. And now we're going to have Devonta Smith go somewhere in probably the first round, probably mid-first round is my guess. And Jalen Waddle probably in the same ballpark, mid-first round. So
yeah,
we'll see where they end up. But I kind of doubt that they don't end up with, a Cortland Sutton or something like that on the team where, well, we're going to hope for wide receiver 2 seasons if everything breaks right for these guys, I guess.
Yeah. So I could see them being good wide receiver 2s on their team, and that'd be a good role for them and a good fit, and with a good alpha on the other side, just keeping the coverages lighter for them to work. And that's valuable for the NFL level, just production wise. It's just not what we want at that price tag. If he was cheaper, later first, early second, mid second, I don't know, that might have been more palatable. But a draft like this, when we got guys like Rashad Bateman, Rondale Moore, Seth Williams, Thailand Wallace, all these guys who's done a lot of stuff in their own right, it's really hard to have that premium.
No, for sure. It does always come down to price, right? Like last year when we thought Devonta Smith was going to declare, I was like, oh man, like we got to get the guy dominating at Alabama in the middle of the second round while you guys take Jerry Jeudy in the first round. I was psyched. I was like, we're gonna get the best receiver on the team in the middle of the second round. Like this is a slam dunk. And then obviously he went back and we didn't get to do that. But now the price isn't middle of the second round anymore. It's for a lot of people, Jamar Chase or Devonta Smith, and it's like whoa, like come on now.
Do you think we'd still be having these conversations about Devonta Smith being valued this high if Jalen Waddle would have never gotten hurt? Because Waddle was blowing up too, because taking over games and stuff.
There's no way that we'd be talking about Devonta Smith in this light. I don't think if he didn't have the season that he did, where he was like basically record setting and won the Heisman and all that stuff. Like every time that I'm like, Devonta Smith isn't someone I'm drafting. They're like, he won the Heisman, right? First guy to win the Heisman in 30 years. I'm like, okay. Like half the teams didn't even play this year. Like, yeah, like usually a quarterback wins it, and quarterbacks, a lot of them didn't play. Some of them played like 6 games. Some of them played no games, and basically the SEC played all their games. So,
yeah, it's true.
I guess he won the Heisman, but it should have an asterisk because he didn't have to compete with 130 college football teams to win it.
That's true. It's a different year. It's like the year where like there's all kinds of like different alternatives and stuff happening and shaking stuff up, which for savvy dynasty gamers that could be a benefit for people like us, especially for this year's draft, maybe next year's as well.
Yep.
Speaking of Devonta Smith's weight at 170, Rashad Bateman kind of took the air out of my sails. I know I said on multiple different outlets, I can't remember where, but him coming in at 190 was kind of like demoralizing to me because he was like one of my favorite prospects in this class, maybe for a couple of years now. I've been waiting forever since he was 18 when he broke out. I've been waiting for him to come out, and then he weighs in small, and then he doesn't test well for his size, and it just wasn't very encouraging. I still like him. I still want him, but it's not the same. How do you feel?
Yeah, I had a hard time with this one, wrapping my head around exactly what happened. We were promised 6'2", 210 pounds of solid muscle. And then we got, 6 foot and 190. And I'm like, well, now we have Jerry Jeudy. Like, that's his measurements. This isn't what I was told. I'm not that excited about Rashad Bateman all of a sudden. And to be fair, like my thresholds are like, 5'11" and up, 195 and up, and 26 BMI and up. That's kind of what I look for. So he did only miss by 5 pounds. And when you think about it, or in his interview, he said that he has never weighed over 200 pounds. So the 210 was always a fabrication. But he did say he normally does weigh 195, but he got COVID. He's got asthma. It hit him harder than most. he lost a bunch of weight, and he only got back to 190 so far.
Mm-hmm.
So there is hope that he can get to 195. But 195 things look a little better, which is kind of funny to say. We're only talking about 5 pounds, but I mean, the stats bear out. Like, if the guys could weigh 5 more pounds, they'd probably be better football players. Is the way that the numbers look. So we'll have to, I'm not treating him quite like a full-fledged beta. I'm kind of treating him a little bit between the two because he's somewhere in the middle. If he's telling the truth about actually weighing 195 usually, but I went through this with the patrons. They were like, "What do we do with Rashad Bateman? Now he's a beta, Rashad Beta man." Like,
I love that name.
I don't know. So they're like, "What if he was 195? What happens then?" Because like the 190 weight isn't good. It's basically a handful of players in like the last 20 years that have been 190 and 6 foot, like that kind of proportion. So they're like, what happens if he gets to 195? I'm like, okay, well, if he gets to 195, then the only bulletproof guy that we have in that same like proportion range is Jeremy Macklin. That's the only one. And Jeremy Macklin did have 2 top 12 seasons, I found out. I didn't realize that. I thought he was more of a wide receiver 2 type, which he was most of his career, but he had a couple pop seasons, so that's pretty good. But that's it. That's the only one. And then, we have CeeDee Lamb kind of in that range that just came out this year, who played like 100% of his snaps from the slot, which is what we'd expect from an undersized player to play out of the slot so they don't get bullied. And now I'm like, well, if that's Rashad Bateman's future, like that's not that exciting to me. But again, like maybe these guys can shift outside and it's all going to be fine because the NFL's changing. Everyone tells me every year. And the big wide receivers are dead, even though like DK Metcalf and AJ Brown are the wide receiver ones overall. And, they're not little guys and they came out in 2019. So I don't know that the big wide receivers are dead, in my opinion. I just think we're getting some good ones that are smaller now. So we'll kind of see what happens in that front, I guess. But Rashad Bateman's weigh-in was an absolute killer. It was really disappointing. And I've moved him down slightly in my rookie rankings, but it's more along the lines of my dynasty rankings where he really took a hit. Like, I think I only moved him out 1 or 2 spots in my rookie rankings, but in my dynasty rankings, I moved him like 10 spots because when he was going to he's bulletproof. I will confirm that at this point, as long as he gets drafted at a reasonable spot, he will be a bulletproof wide receiver for me. And when we look at bulletproof alphas, we see like a tremendous hit rate of like 3+ wide receiver 1 seasons, which is like perennial wide receiver 1 player. They miss when they get hurt or they miss when their quarterback gets hurt. Those are the kind of guys that we want to chase. And that's what he looked like at 6'2", 210. We thought we were getting, DeAndre Hopkins or Devonta Adams or like something like that, one of these bigger guys that isn't overly athletic. And then he comes in running way faster than he was supposed to at 6'2", 210. But of course he did because he was only 190 pounds. So of course he's faster than we thought he was going to be. And anyway, so we shift from that to like, well, hopefully we get a couple wide receiver 2 seasons out of him. So his like career projection for me went from like perennial wide receiver 1 to perennial wide receiver 2, which really hit him in the dynasty rankings. But because we don't have any other guys in this class that project his dynasty or like perennial wide receiver 1s, he didn't really move that much. So it's kind of a weird phenomenon. And like I was just saying with Brevin Jordan testing in way worse or way less athletic than we thought he was going to be, and having like that easy pivot from Pitts to Brevin Jordan, the same thing happened with Jamar Chase. Now I'm like, you know what? If you don't get Jamar Chase, it's not so bad. You can get Rashad Bateman at the end of the first. Now I'm like, you know what? You got to get Jamar Chase. It doesn't matter. You just got to go get Jamar Chase. He's the guy you need. Everything else from there is a huge cliff. And it's the same thing with Pitts. Like they're just one of a kind in their class now, which wasn't the case last month or even 2 weeks ago or however long ago it was when these pro days happened.
Yeah. Another thing about Bateman, and this is the one thing that I was worried about before the pro day, is just what the NFL thought of him, where he was going to get selected at, because you'd watch mocks and you watch what big media would do, because a lot of times big media, they're already talking to like scouts or talking to the teams and stuff, and you see him ranked really low, like some of the NFL.com rankings, he'd be like wide receiver like 11, 10, 12 ranked, and it was a big conundrum. So I was wondering, like, maybe some of that size stuff was already leaked out to them, or they knew something we didn't, and I'm just scared that maybe falls farther than what we're expecting him to get drafted.
Yeah, his NFL.com grade, which is something I don't use for wide receivers, but it's a talking point at least. It's very accurate in predicting draft capital, I found, but it's not very accurate in predicting who's good because they overdraft Alabama or they overgrade Alabama wide receivers on repeat. But
Henry Ruggs.
Yeah, exactly.
Henry Ruggs grade.
But Rashad Bateman came in with like an absurdly low grade, if I recall correctly. I'm just gonna look it up.
Yeah, I remember it, like barely a starter.
6.27, which is like, I think he has a good backup who could become a starter. That's the grade that NFL.com gave him. I was pretty freaked out by that because that's, like I said, they're pretty good at predicting draft capital. And if that means that Rashad Bateman isn't going to get draft capital, then I'm a lot less interested in Rashad Bateman because he's not going to get a chance or he's not as good as his numbers suggest, which is definitely the case sometimes.
Yeah. That's got me worried because I'm afraid he'll like fall to like 4th or 5th or something, kind of like Tyler Johnson did. Tyler Johnson had some other issues that popped up during the draft process, but that's been scaring me this whole time because I've watched the tape, everything checks out, the metrics check out, good breakout age. The pro day is a different story, but before that, everything was checking out. I see that grade. I see that ranking with that grade. He had someone real random ranked right ahead of him too. I forget who it was. Was it Nico Collins? I think they had Nico Collins ranked, and it was like, man, if they have Nico Collins ahead of him, was he going to fall to like the 5th? It's definitely day 3 then.
Yeah, that's getting pretty scary when you got guys like that surrounding him.
Yeah, and then I'm with you with Jamar Chase. He's just the 101, just etched in gold in this class.
Oh yeah,
and that's who I want. And it doesn't really matter where he goes, even if he goes to Cincinnati. And I know people are really worried about that because of T. Higgins being there. Joe Burrows may be on one leg, and who knows what they're going to do with the offensive line. To me, at that spot, if he goes to Cincinnati, I want both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I want them both on the same dynasty team for whatever it costs. I like both players, and I think both players will just rise the tide for the team. What's your take on these guys?
I completely agree with you. If they both go there, I don't think that Jamar Chase going there is going to help T. Higgins by any stretch. That's not what I'm saying. But I don't think it's going to be a death sentence where we're not going to want to own T. Higgins in Dynasty. I think that his current value is kind of like baking in a Jamar Chase arrival for me because I think he has top 5 upside as soon as this year. The offense is going to be great because Joe Burrow is a good quarterback. He's already shown that he's a good quarterback. They pass a ton. They have a good secondary receiver in Tyler Boyd. They have a good running back in Joe Mixon. So the offense is set up to be one of the best offenses in football, in my opinion. And T. Higgins is set up to be the alpha of that offense. If Jamar Chase lands there, Jamar Chase will be the alpha of that offense. And it will knock down T. Higgins a little bit. But it's more going to knock down the lower on the totem pole guys. T. Higgins, I think, is probably a 25+% target share guy on most teams in the NFL. But if one of these true alphas comes in, like Jamar Chase, he's probably in like the mid-20s to like 23 to 25 is kind of what I'm thinking he'll be at, which is still like fringe wide receiver 1 numbers. As long as the pie is big enough and he's getting 23% of it, he's still going to have 130 targets, maybe more. So, yeah, I don't mind Jamar Chase landing there. I think it'll help the offense overall. I think that Jamar Chase is going to eat no matter where he goes. He's going to be a high 20% target share guy no matter where he lands. That's just how good he is. And then T. Higgins, mid 20s, maybe low 20s, somewhere in the middle. And then Tyler Boyd is probably going to get knocked down a little bit because he's not going to play in 2 receiver sets, but they don't even play many 2 receiver sets anyways. So I don't think it's going to overly affect his play time, but I just think the targets are going to go further downfield and go to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase rather than Tyler Boyd. And then I don't think there's anybody else on the team that's really going to see any targets. At that point, I think the big guys are going to eat and everyone else is just going to kind of hang out. And we see this almost every year. Almost every year we have a duo as both wide receiver 1s. Almost every single year. Like, Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen for years, 2 or 3 years in a row, were both fringe wide receiver 1s. Juju Smith-Schuster and Antonio Brown were like wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 8 or something ridiculous like that. Godwin and Evans were both up there. Like, as long as the pie is big enough, there can be 2 wide receiver 1s.
Mm-hmm. I usually love this scenario because it usually creates a discount for both or at least one of the players, and that allows me to be able to buy them. Same with AJ Brown back in the day when he was coming out. I say back in the day, that was just a couple years ago, but he got pushed down just because he was with Corey Davis, and people got scared off and created a massive buying opportunity in rookie drafts, which I capitalized on. I imagine you did too.
Oh, yeah, I got a lot of AJ Brown as a rookie. I've sold them all now because I think he's overvalued now. But at the time, it was like, it's funny, like the Dynasty community cares about landing spot until they don't care about landing spot anymore. Like, nothing has changed for AJ Brown. They're still a team that passes like 29 times a game. So the offense still isn't high volume. We've seen pretty much what he can be in that offense already. Like, he has basically peaked in the context of that offense. And it's like a back end wide receiver 1. And then it's a crazy high touchdown rate. Like, I think he had 10 touchdowns in 12 games or something ridiculous like that. And that pushed him up to wide receiver 8. Otherwise, he'd be a mid-range wide receiver 2, which isn't a bad thing. But at wide receiver 1 overall, that's crazy, man.
That is that's a high price tag to pay for that, especially when touchdowns year to year is pretty volatile for players because you just can't count on them.
Yeah, and then it's like I said, it's this weird thing where, you know, people faded him for the right reason. They just shouldn't have faded him at that point because he was a rookie and it didn't matter that he couldn't be wide receiver 1 overall at the price tag that he was going at. So you shouldn't have faded him then. But now his price tag is wide receiver 1 overall or thereabouts, and we're not fading him for the same reason that we faded him in the first place. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't. Another thing that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'll never understand big draft. I'll never understand what NFL teams think. I don't think we ever will, is Kadarius Toney going in the first round. And it's just been there. We've seen other guys mocked in the first round too, randomly, like Tutu Atwell and stuff. But Kadarius Toney's been like etched in stone. And I know a lot of people are down on him to begin with because the numbers are just bad. I see him ranked usually 10th at the highest on some people. Maybe if they want to be concerned, they may have him like 9 or 8. So like the community's ranking him kind of accordingly. I kind of have him as almost a complete fade at this point. Is there any way he can like prove us wrong and just become a good player? Is that possible? Is that even possible? Because I always play devil's advocate because I don't want to be biased and create a bias because I have a process and how I evaluate players. So part of it is I just play devil's advocate and think, how am I messing up here? How can this person prove me wrong? I was wondering if you could figure that out for me.
I don't know that there's a way that I can like rationalize how we would be wrong about Kadarius Toney. I think it would just be football's random, and sometimes what we expect to happen isn't what happens, and I think that's going to be the case with Kadarius Toney. However, I just had Ryan McDowell talking to me about Kadarius Toney, and he said that Toney missed a bunch of games in his first couple seasons, and that's why he didn't do anything. And I didn't know that, so maybe that's the case. And if we use per game stats, then we would have a different understanding of Kadarius Toney. But I don't use per game stats because it honestly brings in more players that you don't want than players that you do want. Like, yes, we would have caught DK Metcalf with per game stats. I didn't use per game stats. If he can't do it in 3 years, if he can't put together a real season in 3 years without game adjusting, then he's probably not that good. And that was wrong. He's obviously very good. So it's completely possible that Kadarius Toney could be good because it happens from time to time. Like even Terry McLaurin, he never missed any games that I can recall, and he never did anything. And then now he's one of the best wide receivers in football. So it's possible that Kadarius Toney is good, but it's so incredibly rare. Like, those are 2 guys from the same draft class, and I can't name 2 guys in like the past 10 years before that draft class that look like those guys that went on to their careers so far. So it's super, super rare.
So we got another 8 years to go till we get another draft like that. So another reason to fade him. It's weird. I did a YouTube video on Kadarius Toney like 2 months ago maybe, and I think it was one of his family members that like commented because it had Tony T-O-N-E-Y in their
Oh, yeah.
name. It was like Letitia Tony or whatever. And she was like, don't you play into your factors or analysis that he switched coaches and all this happened and it took time for him to see the field and do this and that. And I was like, oh my goodness gracious. I can't believe it. It probably is. I mean, I don't know anyone else named last name Tony that would speak up for Kadarius Toney randomly. So and they had to have a Google account, make Google account to do it. So it probably had to be.
There you go. So I just looked it up, and he did miss 8 games and 7 games. Or he played 8 games as a freshman, 7 games as a junior. So he really did only play 2 full seasons, but even his final season wasn't very impressive from a market share standpoint. Mm-hmm. So like, I can't see it happening. He seems like a Tavon Austin type of guy, like get him in space and hopefully he can make a guy miss and break a long one or something. But those guys just don't usually pan out.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I probably won't have any chips on him. A guy who's falling in probably mid-late second round, who's undervalued and could be very interesting if he gets draft capital, is Seth Williams. He's just getting drowned in rookie talk. And his profile isn't spotless, but he's kind of got good size, decent production numbers. Just decent. I mean, not elite. But right situation, right target volume, there could be something there. You a big fan of him?
I am a big fan of him, and it's funny. I was all in on him because I thought that his birthday was April 10th, 2000 or something like that. I forget the day, but I thought he was a 2000 birthday. And then everyone came out like 2 months ago saying, no, he's a 1999 birthday. And that ruined everything for me. I was like, what? Now he's no longer like hitting my thresholds handily because the thresholds move up as they get older, right? Mm-hmm. So he hit my threshold at 18. Suddenly he's not hitting it at 19, even though it's the same season because my threshold's higher. And he dropped from like a bulletproof prospect down to a coin flip prospect, which was kind of disappointing. And then, came out today in the Discord, actually. Somebody was like, hey, is Kadarius Toney or is Seth Williams actually only 20 right now? Like, is he turning 20? Or what's going on, 21? I was like, well, I know I looked, Player Profiler, Dynasty League Football, Peter Howard, all have him at a 1999 birthday. And then I go on Google today, and if you go to Google and just type in Seth Williams' birthday, you get April 10th, 2000. And I'm like, whoa, now we're back to bulletproof Seth Williams. Let's go. And I don't really know what to do now. So I've never messaged a player in my entire life. Mm-hmm. I went on Twitter. I found Seth Williams' account, and I said, hey, man, I'm a big fan. When's your birthday? I DM'd him. So he hasn't replied yet. No surprise, but we'll see if he actually tells me and we can clear this up.
Oh, that would be big time if it was too, because that give him that age 18 breakout age.
Yeah, it's just like his profile just improves across the board if he's a 2000 birthday, because then, like I said, he hits at 18, he hits at 19, he hits at 20 instead of having the higher thresholds with the same season. Just doesn't quite work as well. So we'll see.
We've had this situation before with I don't know if you're around, but for Kevin, I think Kevin White.
Yes.
And he was, I forget if he was older or younger than what he was supposed to be. He was old to begin with for a prospect. But to get his exact birthday, somebody on Twitter found when his girlfriend wished him happy birthday at the time and somehow derived the age from there. And that's how we had to get it because it was off. The Bears didn't even update it correctly for the longest time. And we had his numbers kind of off, so we had to use his girlfriend to get it. So this is kind of a similar situation.
I should see if I can find his girlfriend on Twitter and see if she'll tell me how old he is.
Yeah, girlfriend will probably mention it up. This was when she said happy birthday to him like 2 years prior or something like that.
That's awesome. There's no better detectives than the Devy analysts or the rookie analysts looking for birthdays on the internet. Like, go through every avenue possible to find the right birthdays.
Long time ago. It was like when I first started. It was Jarjan Franklin, running back for Western Michigan. Obviously, they did not have their birthdays out early, and I was trying to do like a Devi article or something on them, and I was new. I didn't know really what to do or how everyone else got birthdays. So I called the college. I was calling around different like administrative offices. Of course, they didn't hand it out because of like information purposes, but
yeah,
it was something I tried to do back then. Is there
call his parents or something?
Yeah, I gotta call his parents up, girlfriend or neighbor down the street, see what I can get.
See when the balloons arrive.
Yeah, when arrives. Yeah, when do they have balloons in the yard? What time of day, and how long have they been doing this for?
Yeah, no, but like Seth Williams, like to me, he looks like a great prospect, and he's got that alpha profile. Like he's 6'3", 210 or somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. Like he's a man on the field, and he plays like a man on the field. Like I don't watch football, but if I were and I saw his highlights, because I do like to partake a little bit, doesn't affect my analysis because I don't know anything about how to watch football. But like when you see him like catch the ball and like toss the guy aside, it's like, yeah, okay, that's a man out there. That guy's a man among boys. So if he can put it all together, like the sky's the limit for him. He could easily be like a Kenny Golladay type of wide receiver. That's actually my comp for him is Kenny Golladay. They're both strong prospects with a little bit later, declare age or rookie age, and a little bit later, just coming into the NFL. They both dominated kind of across the board. They're both like big physical dudes that win above the rim. So, and they're probably both going to be 3rd-round picks. So they really seem similar to me. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm probably going to want Seth Williams on like every single one of my dynasty teams by the time we get to rookie draft season. So, yeah.
He's going to be an incredible buy because at the most he's going to be mid-second, and then if he doesn't line where the consensus wants him to go, he'd be a 3rd rounder, and that'd just be just a cheap ad. You got a ton of upside with good, promising profile.
I kind of hope like Tennessee takes him in like round 3 so that there's just like nobody wants him, and then he can be Corey Davis.
Oh, that would be great. I would love that.
We can get him in the 4th round because they're going to fade him because of the low volume in Tennessee, and AJ Brown's such a stud, and then he's a good player, so he'll get his 20% target share if he hits, and maybe more if he's really good. We'll see. But like that kind of landing spot would just absolutely nuke his value. We'll get him in the 4th round, and it'll be great.
That'd be awesome. And then like 2-3 years later, how things change, and then all of a sudden they're passing a little more and then a little more, and then next thing you know, he's doing really well, and it's just a big return on investment.
Totally.
Heck yeah. So before we cut out today, who is your sleeper in this year's rookie draft? Who are you like hammering home the most? A guy we haven't really talked about yet that you are all in on, ready to rock and roll with?
Let me take a look because we just took my sleeper, which was Seth Williams. Let me find another one for you. I would say I'll give you 2. One I'm very, very interested in is Diamy Brown. He's probably going to be a 3rd-round pick in the NFL draft and a 3rd-round pick in dynasty rookie drafts, and he checks every box that we asked for. Just before pro day season, he had tweeted out, or maybe it was on Instagram, I can't remember. He posted on the internet. I don't remember where or which social media site it was, but he posted an image of a scale showing 197, and I was thrilled. Oh my God, Diamy Brown's 197 pounds. This is amazing. And then it was a lie. He weighed in much less than that at his pro day, but he still has a really attractive profile. He's similar. He's almost exactly the same size as Rashad Bateman. So if you're fading Bateman or you're not fading Bateman based on size, don't fade Diamy. If you're fading both of them, then that's probably the wise decision to some extent. They're probably both good, not be superstars. But Diamy checks every box that I'd be looking for. He's an early declare, age 21, rookie, dominated across the board, dominated with some okay players on his team. Not that there was superstars there, but there were players at least. And then the other guy that I'm really intrigued by is Tamorrion Terry. And we'll see if right now his stock is trending down. Like every time I check grinding the mocks, he's going further and further and further into day 3, which is really disheartening. And I'm not going to be that into him if he goes on day 3. But if he ends up in round 3, then I think we have a conversation to have about him having maybe the highest upside of any of those late round or late second, early third type players in rookie drafts, because he's got a pretty interesting profile. And he actually, his pro day was less impressive than I was expecting it to be. I had heard a lot of talk about him being I thought he's going to be a Martavis Bryant clone, was kind of what I was thinking, like this huge dude that like a really, 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 really discounted Randy Moss, a huge dude that can fly and makes plays on the field, and just like Martavis Bryant. But that didn't really play out that way, and he was a little bit less athletic than we expected. Still a good athlete, just not quite at the level I was hoping. So if he ends up getting round 3 draft capital, he's going to be a guy that I'm very interested late as well.
I like both those guys. I've been watching Terry for a while as a Devy prospect, and one thing you notice is that speed, his ability to pull away, and that size and length. And Diamy Brown's just a big get for me. He's I want a lot of late second round picks because I just want to make sure I get him, and I'm willing to overpay that little bit just so I don't miss out on a lot of drafts. And I call him my cutoff point before I start looking at random running backs and tight ends that I'm not really interested in. Him and probably Seth Williams are like my cutoff point. Like, I want to make sure I get them. I want to make sure I have them. I'll move up my later round capital if I have to bump up slots to get them. But those guys are, I think I consider my cutoff point in this draft before I start moving on to those players that are more of dart throws.
Yeah, I agree. They're kind of the end of my I need them tier. The other guy right there, let's just talk about him real quick, is Thailand Wallace, because he's a really interesting prospect. I have him below Seth Williams and Diamy Brown, and it really honestly has more to do with, well, I don't know Seth Williams' birthday. That's part of it. Yeah. And then the other part of it is that Thailand Wallace tore his ACL, which isn't like a huge red flag for me, but I've been hearing that from like the Twitter doctors that it's a real big problem that his brother tore his ACL 3 times, and his brother's a twin, and that means they have basically the same genetics. And that means that they basically have a problem in their knee where I forget exactly the bone or whatever it is, but something is too narrow and it just severs their ACL when they twist too much. And it's genetic. And that means that he's probably going to have more ACL issues. But man, that dude is good at football. So hopefully it works out for him and he can stay off the IR, but we will wait and see.
Yeah, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear the twin and the ACL issue. That's a different one for me. It's weird. I don't know how to weigh that into his profile because one, like anatomy wise, what it could be not true and may not be the same. But on the other hand, there's a good chance that it is, since they are twins and share a lot of the same genetics or similar genetics. So it is a worrisome thing. And he already has one ACL tear, the least that I know of. So,
yeah, we had Ethan Turner on the Patrons Discord, and he was telling us all about it. He's at eTurnerFF_PT. And then right afterwards, I went and asked my wife, who works in the medical field, if this is true. And she's like, oh, yeah, for sure. That's absolutely true. You didn't know that? I'm like, I'm an accountant. How would I know that? Get out of here. So I have it confirmed by my wife, who's a very reputable fantasy football doctor analyst.
Yeah,
she's not. I'm kidding. She doesn't do anything like that. But she's pretty well versed in the medical field, so she confirmed it for me along with Ethan. And I'm just like that. Like his brother had 3 ACL tears. Ethan did mention that he had 3 ACL tears. I think 2 of them were in high school though, and he said that the rehab from that isn't. Like when you're rehabbing in high school, it's not the same as when you're rehabbing in a major college or in the NFL. So the 3 might have been a result of just, poor healing, I guess is maybe the way to put it.
Yeah.
But if his brother had it and he's had one, it just doesn't look great.
Yeah, it's concerning. I can't say I can't ignore it because it's concerning because there's a good chance that he has that issue, that it could reoccur. And
yeah, it was interesting hearing Ethan talk about it too, because he went into the detail of like what the I forget the bone and what the narrowness means, and that's why it's genetic, because they both have the same bone structure.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting to hear why it was genetic rather than just that it was genetic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense too. Yeah, so, yeah. I like him though. I still like him.
Me too.
Maybe right after Diamy Brown and Seth Williams now, just because that issue. I don't know. That's got to ponder that one out a little bit longer.
Yeah, it took me a long time to come to any kind of conclusion on where I was going to move, and it was just new information that I didn't know what to do with.
I wonder if the NFL is going. I'm sure the NFL is going to take that into consideration too. So
I would suspect. Like I thought maybe he'd jump into round 2 at some point, but then when he was saying that, I'm like, well, if the doctors are doing tests on this kid, they're going to know that that's what's going on, which is interesting. I wonder if they can like measure that or something, and they know who has high risk of ACL tear before they even tear one, and they just don't tell us. I don't know.
they might. But my wife's in the medical field too, and I guess I can see if she can get a hold of somebody that can answer that for us. She's friends with some orthopedists and stuff, so I'd probably figure that out. Like, hey, can you touch someone's knee and figure out if they're likely to have ACL tears? Is that likely to happen? Is that a thing?
I imagine it's an X-ray thing, but maybe you can touch it. I have no idea.
You ever see like those like off the field, like guy gets an injury and they like touch a little bit and then they go, oh, that's ACL tear. And you're like, what's going on here? You need an MRI for that or something. I'm pretty sure.
No, it's funny. They like the stuff they can do without actually like using any equipment is remarkable. Like I tore my Achilles tendon a few years ago, and I went to the doctor. I was like walking on it for like a day. I thought I just hurt it. I didn't know it was an Achilles tear. And I went to the doctor and he's like, well, can you stand on your tippy toes? I'm like, I cannot. And he's like, well, that means you tore your ACL or your Achilles tendon. I was like, that means I tore my Achilles tendon? That's all you need to do is can you stand on your tippy toes? Like, well, I guess we have medicine solved then. Let's go home.
I guess it's kind of like working on a car or something. If you hear a rattle or something, you kind of got a good idea or good process locked down. Kind of like how we got our metrics. Yeah. To where we can lock down on players, they kind of got an idea like, well, if he can't stand on his tippy toes, his pain's here. Odds are it's this.
Yeah, and it wasn't even painful to do it. Like I just literally couldn't. It wasn't like ooh, ouch, I can't do it because it hurts too bad. You just literally can't because it's not attached anymore. Mm-hmm. Like your Achilles tendon isn't attached. Your calf muscle isn't attached to your foot, basically. So he's like, if you can't do it and it doesn't hurt, that means it's an Achilles tear. He still sent me for like MRI or whatever the stuff's called, but or I don't know, not MRI. I don't know any of the medical stuff. I'm an accountant. We didn't talk about this. Sent me for some test, and they said that it was no longer intact. We'll put it that way.
How was surgery like with that?
It was urgent, I guess. You have to get in right away. So he wanted to do surgery like immediately after they did the test on it. And I was like, well, I ate 3 hours ago. Am I allowed to go under after I just ate? He's like, oh no, you need to fast for 24 hours or whatever it was, or 12 hours, or I forget. I was like, well, aren't you supposed to think of that? Like, come on, man. So anyway, I went in the next day and got the surgery, and I don't know. It was a long process to get back to normal. That's for sure. And I never did get back to normal because I'm not an elite athlete by any stretch. Yeah. And I didn't do the training or the, what's it called? The physio maybe to the T that they had told me to. May not have been that hardcore. I probably should have been, but yeah.
Physical therapy and stuff.
Yeah. Turns out my flag football career was over.
Yeah, I missed those days in college. The flag football and intramurals.
Yeah.
The play against the frat guys and the freshman kids. That was my highlight. It's probably my last
peak of my fantasy or the peak of my football career.
Yeah. The last days. Those were great times though.
Oh yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a great time, great chat, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. This was good.
Plug your sites, where you're at, and to everybody so they know where to get the hold of you and find your work.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm on Twitter at DF Bean Counter. That's pretty much where I do everything now. And then I have patreon.com/D we changed it /Bulletproof FF now. And then we got the podcast we just started a couple months ago, 2 months ago. We're on episode 8. So it's pretty new still. I'm still learning how to podcast. It's way harder than I ever expected it to be. And so give it time. Tune in, but give it time. Still learning. But it's Bulletproof Fantasy Football Podcast. And then we're on YouTube where we just chop up the podcast and put it on YouTube in individual player videos. And we put in like the graphics of what I'm talking about, because with math and stats, it's kind of hard to keep track of when somebody's just saying them out loud. So all those are in graphic form on the video, so it makes it a little easier to watch. And that's at Bulletproof Fantasy Football as well. And that's pretty much everything.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for coming on. I want to thank you guys for listening to the show. My name's Bruce. You can catch me on Twitter at MetricSout. You can catch Drew on Twitter at DF Bean Counter. I'll catch you next time with the next episode. And until then, stay fresh and classy.